All right, Dan. A couple of weeks ago, we started off the show talking about how the quarterback touchdown passing numbers are down. Remember that? Like how it's
Yep.
kind of historically getting low. We have a really interesting update. I saw this on Twitter just before we jumped on. This is from Derek Thompson. He writes for the Athletic, does a podcast on the Ringer Network. So this, I'm trusting that his data is real. Okay, neglect everything I'm about to say. He says the state of the NFL passing game through 4 weeks. Listen to this. The highest QB completion rate ever across the league. So right now, we're seeing quarterbacks completing passes at the highest rate through 4 games we've ever seen. But with that,
it's efficient offense.
Yes, with that, it's the lowest average yards per catch ever. So what does that mean? 2 points. We're seeing really efficient short passes. It's the fewest interceptions per game ever through 4 games. So quarterbacks are not risking it. They're not throwing turnovers. Now, that doesn't include sack fumbles and things like that. But it is the highest sack rate in 32 years, which also I think plays into the short passing game, is that offensive line play across the league right now is bad. The highest sack total rate in 32 years through 4 games. It means that offensive lines are not holding up. You're seeing quarterbacks under duress. And then his final point, which I think is, again, kind of all of this encompassed, the fewest passing yards per game in 21 years through 4 games. So what we're seeing right now for quarterback plays, we know touchdown passes are down, but interceptions are also down. Completion percentage is through the roof. Sacks are through the roof, and yards are down. And I think, to me, it's a lot of what we talked about a couple of weeks ago. We're seeing now more data on it. Offensive coordinators, it's all about the scheme, right? It's all about get the ball quickly in space to your playmakers, short reads behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, heck, we'll talk about with the Broncos and the Jets. That's all Bo Nix did was throw behind the line of scrimmage, like in the first half and throughout the whole game. It's really,
I think he had negative 5 yards passing at one point, nearly the entire half.
And what's crazy is we're used to late in the season seeing this more, right? The short passing game, because bad weather, the wind, the cold, the ball travels different. But we're used to seeing in September and early October, that's when Peyton Manning comes out and throws 5 touchdown passes in the first week. You know what I mean? Patrick Mahomes has 15 touchdown passes through the first 4 games. We're not seeing that anymore. Again, I think a lot of it's offensive line play, and a lot of it is scheme right now in the NFL. There's just not the deep shots being taken like we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and, it's a lot of it. I know several analysts have been talking about it. Kurt Warner, Bill Belichick, talking about the increase in cover 2. And it's just that simple a lot of times, is the NFL defenses are no longer willing to play ball with, offensive schemes and saying, oh, yeah, we'll, trust our guys and we'll be able to, man up with you. They're just saying, no, we're going to prevent the deep ball. We're going to prevent the big play. And we're going to force you guys to earn 10 play drives consistently to score points. And that's obviously the way to go. Now, there are some teams that could still tear you apart. I mean, Tom Brady was absolutely amazing against zone coverage. So there's still going to be quarterbacks in the league that are able to adjust and dissect this thing. But those are fewer and further between, because cover 2 is just it. It's a basic yet effective defense for a reason. And it's because it really works. And they're able to run that because, as we talked about, defensive lines are dominant. So when you don't have to blitz and you can get pressure with 4, that allows you to play zone. That allows you to get back and have everything play out in front of you. And then pair that with, of course, the penalties and everything we've talked about. It's been a recipe for, less scoring and less overall production from offenses, albeit at the sake of making things a little bit more efficient. So it's very interesting. I am intrigued by how the league's going to adjust to this and where this will go, because we know eventually they're going to have to get back on the scoring train sooner rather than later, because it's better for the league. And that's the trend that we had been seeing for over a decade at this point. But and that also goes to show, Mark, the 55 touchdown performances from Peyton Manning when he broke the record back in 2015 or 2014 with the Broncos, that seemed at the time like, oh, this is going to be the future of the league. No, that's still very much a difficult to attain,
the Hall of Fame quarterback,
milestone. And we haven't seen Patrick Mahomes repeat his 50 touchdown performance from years ago either. And it's just it just goes to show those are still outliers.
It's still early, still very early, only 4 games in, but it's certainly a trend, right? Like right now, that is, to me, the trend in the NFL, and we'll see if it continues.
All right, let's get to it. Our week 4 recap here on the Football Athlete. All right, as we jump into this, we're going to start with our best win and worst loss of the week. Mark, I'm going to start things off, if you don't mind, with my best win.
That's fine. So that way I can make sure I'm not combining the games again.
Fair enough. It's got to be the Baltimore Ravens for me. There were, as usual, plenty of candidates. But to me, not just the win, Baltimore only getting to 2-2 on the season, so they're not, the talk of the league perhaps at this moment, but the fact that they beat the Buffalo Bills, who were on a, upward trajectory to start the season, was one thing. The way they beat the Buffalo Bills, to me, stood out amongst the rest. An absolute clobbering, 35-10 finish for Baltimore, destroying Buffalo, beating them at their game, and then controlling how they wanted to play football, which is finally the iteration of the Baltimore Ravens I think we've been waiting to see this year with Derrick Henry. Puts up 199 yards on the ground. Oh, and also getting plenty of production out of their backup running back, Justice Hill, in the passing game. Mark Andrews still nowhere to be found, but I almost see that as an encouraging sign for Baltimore that now they can dominate the Buffalo Bills without perhaps their best skill position player being effective. 0 catches for him, and that's 2 weeks in a row for Mark Andrews. I think that injury is lingering, but nonetheless, Baltimore super impressed me in this one. Offense was lights out, and their defense to be able to hold Buffalo. I thought Josh Allen overall looked pretty decent this game, but they just couldn't get the final dagger in drives, and that's a kudos to Baltimore, really bending but not breaking.
Yeah, I mean, Baltimore averaged, I think, 9 yards of play in that game. It is not my best win swap, but I'll take a chance to talk about the game here now, as we like to do. I'll say this. I'm on record is through this show so far saying even when they were 0-2, not concerned about Baltimore at all. And this is exactly why. I knew these games were coming, right? Where you're just getting the onslaught of Derrick Henry. And when Derrick Henry's that effective, it just makes everything else for that Baltimore offense move in such a unique way. I mean, Lamar Jackson, look at his stat line from that game. That's MVP Lamar Jackson. Rushing touchdown, I think 50-plus rushing yards, a nearly perfect passer rating with 2 touchdown passes. And it looked like the stat lines he had from his first and second MVP year, where you're like, oh, my God. I mean, it's not 400 yards passing, but it's 200 yards on like 12 completions and a blowout win with multiple touchdowns. And listen, for the Bills, I'm not concerned about them at all. It sucks that they lost in the way they did, to where they got punched in the mouth early. They then got back up, and it looks like they were back in that game. I actually live bet the Bills at like +7.5.
There was a point there,
because and then the trick play turns into a disaster, and after that, it was again it unraveled for them. And so the fact that they had that fight in them and they had that spark after that start from Baltimore, I think it was a good thing for Buffalo. I think Buffalo, if you're taking anything from it, you're like, hey, we're 3-1. We win 3 games, you lose a game, and you come out and you play flat on the road against the Baltimore. It's nothing to hang your hat about, right? You didn't get upset by the Patriots like we saw the Bengals. You know what I mean? This wasn't an inferior team. This is an equal team. You were in their building in a primetime slot. and you got punched in the mouth and by a team that was more desperate for a win to avoid the 1-3 start. I'm not gonna panic about Buffalo, and I certainly think this is the type of Ravens team that, again, we say it every year. If this Ravens team shows up in January in that game against the Chiefs at home in the AFC Championship game, they're playing in the Super Bowl. Like, so that's it's got to be exciting as a Ravens fan, but it's also got to be so frustrating as a Ravens fan because you just need to see it in that moment,
we
right?
see this in January. Yeah, no question.
Need to see that in that moment, but not panicking about the Bills. They're still really, really good. This was just, hey, a little bit of a wake-up call, and I'm sure McDermott will use this to get his guys right.
Yeah, and Baltimore's a good team. I mean, if you're going to lose 35-10, there are way worse teams to fall to in by that record for sure. All right, your best win of the
week. Best win, to me, I have to go with the other purple team. This one in the NFC, the Minnesota Vikings, 4-0. Now they beat Green Bay. And Dan, similar to the Ravens and the Cowboys game we talked about last week, where the Ravens got up big and then the Cowboys came swarming back, and then all of a sudden it looked like a close game at the end. This game felt exactly similar, right? Minnesota is the better football team. Minnesota dominated that game. And then, like we know professional athletes do in basketball and football and every sport, you're up so big that the other team just gets so desperate. They throw the ball a million times. And, of course, they claw back in. But what did Minnesota do? Just like what Baltimore did? You do enough to just get the win, right? You do enough to just, hey, hang on to the win at the end. Overall, I still look at that game and go, Minnesota's a better football team right now than Green Bay. They did that in Green Bay. Listen, Sam Darnold now through 4 weeks. Again, small sample size. We just talked about at the top of the show. But right now, you have to be honest and say he's playing extremely good football.
Yeah.
Everything in that defense that Brian Flores is doing is working. They are beating not – if you look at who the Houston Texans have beaten right now, it's the Bears, it's the Colts, it's the Jags. They're 3-1. If you look at who Minnesota's beaten right now –
exactly.
You know, the Packers, the Texans, the Niners.
49ers.
Yeah. Like they're beating teams that they weren't supposed to beat when we looked at this a month and a half ago and we were predicting the schedule. And they're doing it in a really dominant fashion with a full team efforts here. Minnesota, to me, that was the most impressive win. On the Green Bay side of it, if I'll just say this, I mean, you're 0-2 with Jordan Love starting this year, and your team, let's be honest, looks like it has more of an identity when Malik Willis was your quarterback. Green Bay, I want to get this right. I think I wrote it down somewhere. Green Bay. Their running backs, remember, they were going into this game leading the league in rushing. Their running backs in that game, 17 carries for 78 yards. Now, you could argue, well, they got down big early, and so that's the game plan. But
that's true. Game script, yeah.
But again, their formula for their 2 wins was let's just pound the rock and dominate and have a physical presence. And yet they come out in this game and there was no physical presence and they got blasted. And then it was Jordan Love throwing 4 interceptions, looking like Brett Favre, just being extremely reckless. He looked healthy. I'm not going to question should they or shouldn't have played him. I think he was fine to play. I mean, he threw 3 touchdown passes. Or no, did I get that wrong? He threw 4 touchdowns and then 3 interceptions. So he obviously could play, but he looked reckless and he put his team in some bad spots as well. And I think there's plenty of throws that him and Matt LaFleur are going to look at and be like, dude, what are we thinking? What are we doing? I think it's an ugly loss for Green Bay against a divisional opponent at home and a great win for Minnesota on the road in the division.
It's amazing what Kevin O'Connell's been able to do with Sam Darnold. And, you know, it really does go to show, like we've talked about, environment plays a huge factor. It's also wild to me that a couple years ago when Geno Smith's career resurgence was happening, the big discussion around it was this is an anomaly. We haven't really seen this type of a rebirth happen for a player who spent several or multiple years as a almost certified bust. only to then, bounce back and become a Pro Bowl caliber type of quarterback and get a contract and all of that stuff. Now we're seeing it, happen, I guess, to a lesser extent with Baker Mayfield, because I don't know if he was ever really fully considered a bust.
Well, he was out of the league. Remember, I mean, I wouldn't say bust. You're right, but it was like hanging on by a thread. And
it wasn't to the extent that Sam Darnold's was, but or the Zach Wilsons, who obviously that story has yet to be fully written. But it's just interesting that now we have two, just a couple years later, of those types of cases to look back on. And we're seeing backups play really well too. I wonder, Joe Flacco last year, and Joe Flacco again this past week, and Josh Dobbs last year. It's just it's very interesting just to see what offensive coaches, for the most part, are able to do for quarterbacks who are either, well past their prime or hadn't found it yet.
Well, and I think, Dan, you nailed it there. And also what's to me really inspiring and all of that for Geno, it wasn't an offensive coach. I mean, he went to Pete Carroll, a defensive head coach, and he's got a defensive head coach. And if you're Baker,
but they'll say, it was Dave Canales, who was a big part of that, or
Shane Waldron for Geno, but for Baker, or
Shane,
he got rehabilitated by McVay, and then has been great since leaving McVay in Tampa for now a year and a half. Sam Darnold rehabilitated by Shanahan, and now he's been great for 4 games. With Kevin O'Connell.
Very true.
It is interesting. And again, you're seeing it a little bit, maybe even with Justin Fields, you could throw in there as well. Maybe playing the most consistently decent football of his career, again, just with a culture change and a coaching change. I think we're going to see more of it too, because I know this is way looking ahead, but I don't see a lot of can't miss insanely exciting quarterback prospects in next year's draft. And so that's going to help out a lot of these guys who maybe think, well, why not take a flyer on them, a former first-round talent who's already been in the league and a veteran guy, and maybe we just coach him up better.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. All right, worst loss for you.
Worst loss for me, Jets, Jets. Dan, they're at home against a rookie quarterback. Their defense only gives up 10 points. And they lose 10-9.
Terrible.
I didn't watch the whole game, but it was one of those games that was on, the red zone as I'm watching my team and watching the Bears. It's like, oh, let's check back on the Jets. You're like, and then like at halftime, like, oh, that's an ugly game, but I'm sure it'll get figured out. The Jets will end up winning, 24 to whatever. And then you're like, wait, that game's over and they lost and it's 10-9. And Dan, listen, the Jets schedule, it's got some real pitfalls in the next couple of weeks. This was a Jets team that was supposed to now be 3-1 and kind of riding high, and they were supposed to be on this 3-game win streak. And you lose a game to a Denver team that is just not good. But shout out to Patrick Surtain. Shout out to that defense for playing a really elite football game. But really, what it looked like was a Jets team that wasn't prepared. It looked like a Jets team that was reading their own news clippings and having a lot of fun and thinking,
no identity.
We're good. We're fine. We're back. I mean, Breece Hall was ugly in the game. What did Breece Hall's the running backs for the Jets, Breece Hall, and then that rookie out of Wisconsin, 18 carries for 38 yards.
Yeah.
I mean,
horrible. Breece had 10 for 4.
Yeah, and that's one of the worst stat lines ever. And
that's awful.
Aaron wasn't great. This is the exact type of loss where if the Jets miss the playoffs, you go, boom, that's the loss right there. At home against an inferior opponent when you had extra rest to prepare. Remember, they had played on Thursday night the week before.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
Really embarrassing for the Jets.
Terrible. And at home at that.
And for Denver, I'll just quickly add, for Bo Nix, I mean, that was ugly. I mean, that was horrific. It was horrific. Kudos for winning a game.
I guess you could say he didn't throw a pick, so good on that.
Yeah, kudos for winning the game. Kudos for throwing your first touchdown. But good God, was that bad quarterback play. Really, really, really gross quarterback play from Bo Nix.
obviously he's got a lot of time and he's got a good coach,
Yeah.
offensive coach in Sean Payton. But you and I talked about Bo Nix being the quarterback where we're like, I don't think he's that good of a prospect. You know, 6-year college quarterbacks who have, you know, a really good season or two, like Joe Burrow, don't come across very often. So with a
Well, and
player
also
like Bo Nix, there was a lot of questions.
he's the epitome of everything's behind the line of scrimmage right now. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is behind the line of scrimmage or on the line of scrimmage. And you just, I get that you're trying to protect him. You're going to grow slowly, you know, and my mind can still be changing it, but let's just be objective. What we watched from him on Sunday was ugly and bad. It wasn't good. There was nothing that you could be like, ooh, love that. This is
Yeah,
broke.
no, it was doo-doo. First touchdown pass of this his career though goes to Cortland Sutton in this one, and they get the win after all said and done. Well, this was a candidate for me for worst loss of the
Oh,
week,
okay.
but in an effort to insert some variety here, I have picked my kind of second or adjacent selection for this one. But oddly enough, as you mentioned, thinking the majority of the game that the Jets were going to win. I wanted to create a separate segment for this week only titled Worst Win of the Week because I was already prepared to say, yeah, the Jets won, but that was terrible. And then they
Yeah.
go ahead and lose it anyway. So good stuff there. I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns
Oh,
falling to 1-3 on the season with
oh,
a
yeah.
despicable 20-16 loss to the Raiders, who I still don't believe are a very good team. They're 2-2, yes. They're, kind of feisty like we envisioned, yes. I still don't view them as a 7+ win team by the end of the season. Maybe that is their ceiling is 7 wins in my view, but just not a very talented, good team. And the Cleveland Browns offense it's broken. Without Nick Chubb, the Browns can't do anything. And that offensive line that was one of the best we had seen in a long, long time,
Looks
maybe
bad.
3 to 4 years ago, has now turned into a complete liability. They're very poor, and Deshaun Watson is just playing bad football. Mark, at the end of this game, when you have a chance in the red zone, I don't remember, they were at like the 12 or 15-yard line, somewhere right there. Obviously, a very doable moment, 4th down, and Deshaun doesn't even get a pass off, takes a
You
sack.
could, yeah.
When it's the game is over and you take a sack, it's incredible how much this production has fallen from 3 years ago. It's not terribly surprising. I know we were like, the guy's got a year and a half off and we didn't know what to expect and then he didn't play well, but it's still just it's very interesting to see a guy go from a all pro level talent
Mhm.
to bottom 5, 6
Yeah,
quarterback in the
can't
entire
play.
league.
Yeah,
I
like,
mean,
can't
at this
play.
point, you'd feel more comfortable with Gardner Minshew than Deshaun
Oh,
Watson, who was playing opposite him in this case. Just brutal. And now Cleveland's 1-3, basement of the AFC North. I feel much better about the Bengals, who have the same record, way better about the Bengals with the same record than Cleveland. I don't see them getting out of this rut, Mark.
no, again, I think it's a great choice for a worse loss. It was definitely on my list. I'll say this, just look at the fact that this was a Raiders team that had a really ugly loss the week before. And what did their coach do? Their coach challenged them to be more physical. He was saying that he had a team that was making some business decisions in that loss,
Yep.
which is like the most insulting thing you could say to these pro athletes. And what did they do? The Raiders came out and ran the ball 29 carries, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. They just said, we're going to just be a physical football team and beat the crap out of you. And they did that. And what's crazy is, as bad as Deshaun was, I was reading some stuff and hearing from Browns fans, they actually thought this was one of Deshaun's better games as a Brown, which just goes to show you how bad it's been in his
Right.
career as a Cleveland Brown. It's ugly. And they're 1-3 and they're trapped with that contract. You know, Dan, what did I say before the season started with the Bills? Addition by subtraction. There are just sometimes there's just a cloud, an ugliness, and the Browns are dealing with that right now. They're dealing with that right now. I truly believe if the Deshaun Watson was just plucked out of that locker room and just he was gone, just gone. And they put in Joe Flacco, Jameis Winston, Gardner Minshew, insert name here, right? Of just average guy on the street or just average quarterback who's just playing. I mean, you'd see a completely different vibe. They would be a feisty, fun team that would be like the Raiders, physical, have an identity, shocking people and things like that. I truly think there's just a stench. There's a dark cloud, and he is that thing. It's just a vibes. The vibes are completely off in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski's a good coach. He's two-time coach of the year. He's led this Browns team to the playoffs twice with Baker Mayfield and Joe Flacco. I truly don't believe it's on him. I think it's just the vibes. I think they're devoid of a real leader in Deshaun Watson, and everyone in that locker room, I think, just is frustrated by it, and they're not playing good football. I don't see changing even with Nick Chubb coming back. I hope it does, because I like Chubb and he's a good running back, and hopefully he can return from injury and regain to his 90% of his all-pro form, right? And maybe that at least helps them be a physical team. But as long as Deshaun Watson's their quarterback, I truly think this is going to be a team that's going to lose games ugly, and in ways that are really frustrating, like that sack you had mentioned, where your quarterback can't even give you a chance to win the game late.
No, yeah, and they've posted screenshots of some open receivers on that play. Obviously, any screenshot does not tell the complete picture, but
I've dealt with screenshots.
Yeah, it goes to show that that the unwillingness to even just like chalk one up. I mean, there's nothing you could lose at that point. Like the sack is the worst thing you could do. And so to take that in that moment,
I think
was wild.
It takes you into Deshaun's brain a little bit too. Remember, before the game, earlier in the week, there was the quote going viral, him basically saying, "I'm not running." Like a reporter asked him, "Did you hear that quote?" It was the soundbite.
No, I didn't.
Oh, the soundbite's brutal for Deshaun. They asked him like, "Hey, listen, what can you do to like help get this offense sparked? Should we design some more runs? Like, what are you willing to do?" And he like bit the reporter's head off, like, "I'm not a running quarterback. I'm not here to run the ball. I'm here to throw the ball. I'm not going to put myself in a position to get injured." And he knows, because the worst thing in his mind that can happen is exactly that. What happened last year when if he's off the field, they're going to play better and they're going to win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he knows as long as he's healthy, they're going to have to start me because of the contract. And so, so he's saying the thing out loud in that quote, and you're seeing it there. I think in that sack too, he's so afraid to throw a bad interception, because then the coach can be like, "Dude, look at this. You're throwing. You can go to the meeting and be like, he threw an ugly interception to lose us the game. We're going to go in a different direction." He's just trying to persevere, and it's only hurting him more, as opposed to galvanizing the team and just putting his body in the line and going out there and doing whatever he can to try to win a football game and win the teammates and the fans over. It's ugly in Cleveland.
It's very, very ugly. All right, we're going to move on to some other games, but first I got to give a shout out. We appreciate all of the loyal listeners and those engaging with us as we are live here today. So got to give a shout out to Tyler Jones. Jets couldn't stop the Bo Leavers with his first touchdown.
He's a Broncos fan, right?
He is. He is a Broncos fan out there in Denver country.
Good luck. Sure. Good luck, Tyler.
Enjoy it. Enjoy the Bo magic while you can, because I don't imagine that's going to stick around too much longer. But hey, we've been wrong before. All right, let's get to the Thursday night matchup. Cowboys-Giants, kind of an ugly game, pretty boring, 20-15. Cowboys win. They are 2-2. Giants are 1-3. Any takeaways from this one?
Just stop the bleeding for the Cowboys, right? Like, it is the definition of a get-right game. Dak Prescott owns the Giants and the Commanders. He owns them. And so if you're a Cowboys fan, at least you can look at that win and say, right, like, okay, the games
you won the game you're supposed to win.
Yeah, automatic wins. We got one. And for the Giants, it's just going to be that kind of year, right? Where they're frisky and at moments they look fun, but there's other moments where they're just really painful to watch.
Yeah, no, it's probably going to be a long season for New York, but it's also kind of a part of it. Let Malik Neighbors show how good he is.
Oh yeah, Stud.
You're going to be attractive maybe to any free agent quarterback possibly, or just get yourself one of those high draft picks coming up this year. But also good for the Cowboys to get the win on an extra long week. Not only do they get that long rest from playing on Thursday, but they also don't play until Sunday night against Pittsburgh this upcoming week. So a little bit extra rest for them, and to do it with a win behind always feels extra special.
Is that game in Dallas or Pittsburgh?
You know what? That's a good question. It's in Pittsburgh, I'm pretty sure.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun. Sunday night football, Pittsburgh, Dallas. Yeah. That's a classic uniform matchup in Pittsburgh. That'll be great.
It is. Yeah, and just like a classic, matchup in general between two storied franchises. Obviously, they've had those Super Bowl matchups in the past, and the Cowboys have bested them before they've bested the Cowboys. Always a pretty popular matchup, but an important game early season for both teams too. I mean, the Cowboys want to sustain momentum. Steelers want to get it back, especially before they, get closer and closer to that gauntlet down the road. Falcons win on a walk-off field goal by Younghoe Koo. He's honestly, like, slowly but surely over the years become one of the better kickers of all time. Like, honestly, like, it's been that way for a little while. He's been in the league 7 years. 58-yard field goal, nothing to sneeze at for sure. And the Saints now have officially cooled off. Like, now the hot, fiery start, those first 2 weeks have resulted in back-to-back losses. This one coming against a division opponent. And the Falcons now kind of riding the ship after a slow start to the season as well.
Yeah, overall, I watched a lot of this game. Overall, I felt the Saints were the better team for large portions of the game. The Falcons, I mean, Kirk got bailed out, Dan. 68 QB rating, 0 offensive touchdowns, and you win a game at home. Like, that's ugly. You're at home against a divisional rival, and you get completely bailed out with some defensive scores and some bad turnovers from the Saints, and a great kicking performance. You don't score any touchdowns. It felt like an Arthur Smith game offensively for the Falcons. No Bijan. I think he only had 7 rushes. I think there was 1 target or something for Kyle Pitts. So, yes, Atlanta won, but it felt really ugly, and they can't be confident. But maybe that's the good thing, right? You win, and then the coach gets to rip you all week in practice as well. And for the Saints, you're right, they cooled off. But right now, I still feel better about the Saints overall than I do Atlanta.
Interesting. I think I feel a little bit better about the Falcons just because of the potential factor there. I do get concerned about the defense. Like, obviously the Saints have a pretty talented defense, and that's going to keep you in a lot more games down the stretch. But I don't know. I just have a feeling that the Falcons are going to warm up to this personnel and the system. And part of it's just, I think Raheem Morris is a much, much better coach overall. So I do think the Falcons, start to get better, but at the same time, I don't know where that leads them. I think the Falcons win this division, but again, winning the NFC South isn't much of a badge of honor these days. It's usually 9 wins will get you that crown. And let's not forget, I mean, Tampa's still, kind of feisty in this division.
Tampa and Atlanta Thursday night football this week, by the way.
That's right.
Huge matchup.
And that's, good for Prime, because before the season, again, the slate of Thursday night football looked brutal. And it was like, God, Prime can't get any good matchups. But if you told us, preseason, oh yeah, you looking forward to the Falcons and Buccaneers Thursday night football week 5? Not many people would say yes, but now it's actually one that we want to watch and kind of mark those calendars for. Hey, how about your Bears getting back in the win column and defeating a pretty talented Rams team, 24-18? I am curious to hear your thoughts. Caleb Williams looking fairly, polished and good in this game overall. I was pretty pleased with his overall performance.
Yeah, I'll give you my short note, and then I can expound on it a little bit. My short note for this game, I wrote, Bears have a formula now to win games. We now know how the Bears can win games. That's exciting, right? Don't turn the ball over and get turnovers and be at home. They have 2 wins
and run the football a little bit.
Well, yeah, they have 2 wins on the year. Both wins are at home. where their quarterback had 0 turnovers and their defense forced turnovers. The Bears actually now have a +2 point differential as well. Hey, look out, +2 point differential in the year.
Let's go.
I have a whole thing here. I don't need to get into all this. What I will say is this: love seeing the DeAndre Swift game, right? Loved seeing that this is what we expected out of DeAndre Swift when we signed him.
Yeah.
Not every game, but we expected at least something like this at points every game, and it took until week 4 to get it. I will say the offensive line is now, to me, showing a slight uptick, like in the sense that when Nate Davis does not play, and they started the game without Nate Davis, he had to come in because of Tevin Jenkins' injury, which again, the Bears are at the point now where it looks like they're going to need 4 complete new starters for me to feel really good going into next year. Jenkins is talented, but can never stay healthy. Braxton Jones has been really bad in pass protection as a left tackle. But they found this kid Pryor, who's like 6'7", 350 pounds. They're playing him at guard, and his pass protection has not been great, but he's been helpful in the run game on the right side with Wright. And so that is a positive. If they can get the tackle from Yale, the rookie, they have another guy who's on IR who should come in and actually become their new starting center. You start to put Nate Davis down the list as he'd be like your 4th guy to come off the bench in a case of an injury. That's a huge positive, because if the Bears offensive line looks average or slightly below average like they did in this game, well, then look, they can win some games. It's still ugly. And I think Caleb, I have the stat, I don't want to butcher it, and this is again going with the fact of all the bad quarterback stats, right? Caleb Williams on throws of 20 or more yards. So again, downfield, everyone's struggling, but on throws of 20 or more yards through 4 weeks, 3 of 19, 15.8% completion, 3 interceptions. So he's struggling downfield. Why? Because the offensive line is ugly and bad right now. But he had 2 impressive throws, that dart to Cole Kmet over the middle late in the 4th, and obviously the touchdown pass to DJ Moore. This is a positive win. I think Mark Silverman said it best on ESPN 1000. I was listening to him on a Bears Victory Monday, and I totally failed this way, but he put it into words. I feel way less nervous about the Bears now through 4 weeks. Like after week 2, I was feeling really nervous. Like, oh my God, please, for the love of God, just don't embarrass me. I now, after week 4, consider and say, I'm not worried about being embarrassed. This defense is really good. And this offense, if Nate Davis keeps falling down the pecking order, seems like it can be put together. I'm still really concerned about some play calling. I love the fact that we decided to go jumbo package in the goal line, going the stupid quarterback option on the goal line. So they're righting some of those wrongs.
Yeah, that was perplexing.
So that's good. That's a step in the right direction. But Dan, I think the other concern right now is there are times where DJ, Rome, and Keenan and Caleb all look off, where it's like, he's looking for Rome and looking for DJ, and DJ stops running. And then DJ looks back like, oh shit. And then he's looking for Rome, and Rome goes right and he throws it left. And you're like, oh, rookie mistake. So I expected a lot of that. Again, rookie quarterback, but it's still really painful to watch, right? Like it's really painful to watch. As far as the Rams go, listen, I'm bummed about the Rams. I'm really bummed about the Rams. We saw the potential week 1 in that loss to the Lions. This Rams team had the potential to be a top 5 team in the NFC. They are no Puka Nacua, no Cooper Kupp. They are down to 3rd and 4th string wide receivers. They're still down to backup offensive linemen all over. Now they're getting cluster injuries on defense. This is the most beat up team in the NFL right now. And even with that, Stafford's still slinging it, looks great. But they're just not going to be able to win many games. They've got to find a way to tread some water until they can get some guys playing. And even then, it's going to take a miracle run for them to try to fight for a wild card spot. It's a bummer because it feels like Stafford's finally healthy and the rest of the team is just falling apart around him. And it stinks because they're a fun watch. They're a good team, I think, because of Stafford.
Yeah, I think so too, but I am starting to get really, really, really concerned for LA. It's just you can only weather so many injuries, and having Cup and Puka out has proven to show that it's, yes, McVay is really good at what he does and schemes things up, but you're talking about, an older quarterback who maybe can't move as well as he used to. And look, Stafford was 20 of 29. Like, he didn't play terrible, but he did have a costly pick. They had to lean into the run game, and I just don't know that the run game is going to be able to take them through, this early slate while they wait for Nakua to come back and hopefully Cup. So it's just, it just shows you how much they need to lean on those two guys. And if those two guys are gone, they are very top heavy. They're just a top heavy team. And so, yeah, I do have concerns.
Okay. Final Caleb Williams stats. Just again, this is why I'm feeling good, and this is why I think Bears fans feel good. Caleb Williams had 124.5 passer rating when under pressure in week 4. That was the best among all NFL quarterbacks. So he's already used to the bad offensive line and getting better with the bad offensive line.
He's adjusting to it.
And right now, Caleb Williams through 4 games, if I were to tell you before week 1 started, through 4 games, he'd be over 62% completion percentage. He had more passing yards than Kyler, Trevor Lawrence, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, Anthony Richardson, and more touchdown passes than Matt Stafford. All of that with Keenan Allen only playing 1.5 games. Like, you take that.
And being 2-2.
You take that and run with it. He's going to still have to the overall general NFL Twitter sphere is still ripping him versus Jaden because Jaden is on this insane start. He's going to have to overcome the bad start, but he's slowly but surely winning over. And you're seeing it even in the national media. Be like, the numbers aren't lying. He's figuring it out with a really bad offensive line, and that's exciting.
Good news ahead for Chicago. Steelers fall, dropped their first game of the season on the road.
Jump into it.
To Indianapolis. Anthony Richardson getting hurt in the first half of this game, leaving early with a hip injury. It was very bizarre by Shane Steichen that Richardson left, and then they put him back in not too long after. And the first play they call is, or maybe it wasn't the first play, but it was one of the first plays.
It was the first play.
The very first play back was a read option in the red zone that they call, and Richardson both elected to not hand the ball off and take it himself, but also just kind of do like a little bit of a late slide there, and gets hurt again. And then he's out for the rest of the game. A really weird call. And then also weird that Richardson, chose to hang on to that one. I know it's a read and you got to do what you're reading, but nonetheless, that was bizarre. But Joe Flacco came in and played really well. I do honestly believe that a big portion of this offense operates better with Joe Flacco right now because Richardson is so much of a wild card when it comes to his accuracy. I mean, his big thing is like, over the top, massive throws. But as we talked about, a lot of defenses are taking those big plays away. So those are going to be very few and far between. He's turnover prone. He's now what we've seen a little injury prone. Flacco's getting the ball out quick. And Michael Pittman, it was no surprise, it was pretty dormant the first 3 weeks of the season, came alive in this game, over 100 yards. First time he's done that this season. Pittsburgh really, their defense started off super slow, gave up 14 points on the first 2 drives. So to me, that was the big difference maker here. And then just a bunch of compounding issues on the Steelers sides that they just completely, I want to give credit to the Colts, but the Steelers really did beat themselves in this game. Especially with how well I actually feel really even better about Justin Fields than I did after last week's performance. Justin Fields, with his first real adversity this season, showed moxie and ability to put the team on his back because the run game was nowhere to be found this game. Najee couldn't get anything going on the ground. Cordell Patterson got hurt. They didn't have Jalen Warren, so they went with a practice squad guy for a couple series. So they couldn't run it all, and it was all Justin Fields. Over 300 yards passing in this game, 2 touchdowns on the ground with his legs. Like, he honestly looked good. There was the boneheaded, 20-yard sack that
he does
we've
those.
seen.
He does
We've
those.
seen that. And he made it worse by fumbling on that play. That was near the red zone, would have gotten at least a field goal. George Pickens fumbled inside the 10-yard line when they would have gotten a potential touchdown. Joey Porter Jr. dropped a interception in his hands in the red zone. That led to 7 points.
That was ugly
for the Colts. So if we're talking about all of those things that happened, and then say that the Steelers had a chance at the very end of the game and should have tied it up, they were within field goal range, and instead, just a complete boneheaded missed opportunity with a botched snap again, that took them out of field goal range and ended the game. You're talking about like 4 real big opportunities, and that's obviously a bad thing. But the good side is it took all 4 of those things, and they only lost by 3. So if one of those things is cleaned up or they take advantage of it, they win this football game. And
100%.
so part of me was, discouraged, obviously, by the start. The defense didn't look good early, obviously. But also the way that the offense kind of responded and looked much better throughout the entire second half did give me hope. So overall, it sucked, especially the way that game ended. But I was also left a little encouraged that, okay, I think we're going to be okay offensively. Like there's still a light here for this team to win with their offense, if their defense kind of falls apart down the road. But they need to clean some of these things up for sure. And the snap situation's the biggest one. That's inexcusable.
Even the best defenses in 2024 NFL are going to have bad games. They have games where they can't win you the game because it's the modern NFL. It's not the 80s anymore. The 85 Bears defense was special for a reason, because at that generation of football, you truly could just win every game because you had the best defense. That's not how the NFL works anymore. So yes, you're going to have slip-ups, right? The thing that sucked for the Steelers is this was one of those games that looked winnable. It felt winnable. It definitely was winnable. And I think if Richardson stays healthy, you probably win it, because he does create he's going to guarantee create one gigantic turnover. And of course, the back is a guy who knows the Steelers all too well and is just going to be able to dice through them and keep the ball moving. And so it was a bummer for the Steelers. But I agree with you. I think you nailed it. You should still feel confident. Najee Harris is the luckiest guy that Breece Hall had 10 carries for 4 yards, because he had 13 carries for 19 yards. I mean, ugly stat lines for some star running backs, and his was one of them. I'll say this about Anthony Richardson. A lot of people, and I'm glad you did it, a lot of people criticizing Shane Steichen for the guy just got a hit pointer and then he comes out for 4 plays and you send him back in there and you call a read option. Anthony Richardson, right now, his only value to you as a play caller and as a football player is that he is an athlete. His value is not in the pocket, is not where his value is at all. If Anthony Richardson and the doctors clear him to go out there, I'm calling run plays. I'm not going, oh no, he just got a hit pointer, let's try to protect him again. He's 6'5", 260 and runs like a 4.4. And his biggest asset to my organization and my team for winning football games is being physical. And I think Shane Steichen also knows what's the worst that can happen. My backup comes in, and then my offense actually runs better and runs the way it's supposed to run. I honestly think it's a win-win for them right now. They're the only team in the NFL right now where I'd say, who cares about the health of your starting quarterback? Who cares? His value to you is being a freak athlete. And so use and abuse that. And when he's injured, oh, ding, 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 ding. If you have a capable, intelligent pocket quarterback, well, then you're going to have one of the top offenses in the NFL, because you have a great, great play caller with great, great play design. Indy, I think, is one of those sneaky teams. I think they're going to float around 500 the whole year. And they're, again, a team that a good team in the AFC is playing late in the year, and they're going to be like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
Because they have as you saw there, and as I saw a couple weeks ago, they are frisky and feisty and better than you think on paper. And when Joe Flacco's in, I think they're even better than they are when Anthony Richardson is in.
Yeah, no, I truly believe that too. But big game next week, I think, for the Steelers to rebound and get back on track, because then they play Vegas after that. And then I think it's the Giants, and then bye
Yeah,
week Commanders. Like there's a lot of opportunity here in the early going for Pittsburgh to continue to stack like they did
totally.
the first 3 weeks of the season. But I'm saying the same thing. It's got to be Justin Fields yet again, especially with how he played. I said even if he loses to the Colts, you got to keep him in, and I still firmly believe that. That was about as good of a performance you could have out of him in a loss, despite that one terrible, turnover. So we'll see if there are brighter days ahead next week and moving forward. I mentioned the Broncos beating the Jets. No need to go over that again, but the Buccaneers did put a hurting on Jalen Hurts and company. The Eagles go into the bye week now off of a loss. A lot to reflect on for Philly. Perhaps it came at the perfect time for the team that
They needed it.
seems to be searching for a lot, and obviously had some injuries that they had to weather too. Hoping to get AJ Brown back and Devontae Smith
Lane
fully healthy
Johnson.
and this team and Johnson. So yeah, this team needs to get right. But the Buccaneers, they are 3-1 this season, Mark. I mean, I don't know about if you put it on there, the For Frequency Sake network has a group for um putting together power rankings now through the season here in the NFL from all the different shows and um, personalities in our shows, putting together power rankings. I had to put the Buccaneers on there. I mean, they have to be in the top 10
Oh,
conversation, in my view.
yeah, I absolutely have the Bucks in there. I mean, they are a team that right now, within the first 5 minutes of that game, it's like, oh, they're winning this game. And what's
Yep.
scary is the Eagles again. Now, it's hard to judge the Eagles right now because they are so injured. And when you have Lane Johnson, I heard a stat that without Lane Johnson, they only have like a 40% winning percentage in his career as an Eagle. Like he is Trent Williams. He doesn't get the respect that Trent Williams does, but his importance to whatever offense he's in is like Trent Williams-esque, where it's like everything runs through the fact that he's one of the great tackles to ever play the game of football. AJ Brown is so important to that offense as well. They needed this bye. I think, let's be honest, let's look at the Eagles through 4 games. I think they feel pretty lucky that they're 2-2. And I would hope that they can get healthy and they can really kind of figure some stuff out. You got to also remember, this is now for Jalen Hurts 3 straight years with a different offensive play caller.
Yeah,
3 in a row.
that's true.
So it's a lot of wait. Well, last year we did this. 2 years ago, Shane Steichen said to do this. Now I need to be doing this. Kellen Moore says I got to be doing this. It's like it's a lot. Like it's not the we take for granted that Nick Sirianni hasn't been changed, but every single year under Sirianni, there's been different offensive and defensive coordinators. And when you add in the fact that you lost massive leadership in the offseason with Kelsey and Fletcher Cox on the defensive side of the ball, and now you add in the fact that you have big injuries to 3 of your most important players, hard to justify hard to quantify how I feel about the Eagles right now. I will say Colin Cowherd and some of the national media was saying today, he led his show with they need to fire Sirianni and hire, Bill Belichick today.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? And then rework, you have the bye week. I don't know. I'm not a fan of Sirianni. I wasn't a fan of Sirianni when they hired him. Obviously, it was proven wrong that first year with the Super Bowl, and now it looks like though maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we were right all along, and it's just taking this long to really kind of that take to come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean they had an incredible stacked roster.
But also the Bucks are good. Like the Bucks are good, and the Bucks were at home, and it was hot as balls, and they played into that. And I really think I've already picked the Bucks to win on Thursday night. I picked the Bucks to win the division. I truly believe in this version of Baker and this version of the Bucks. I don't know how long it lasts with the Bucks because they have a lot of veterans. But this year it feels still like, why can't they win the division? They won it last year and they're on a roll right now. And again, you can only play who's in front of you. They took advantage of a beat up, reeling Philly team, and they came out pissed off that they lost last week against the Broncos. And it was a really, really nice win for Tampa Bay.
Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady on the call for this game as well.
Yeah,
and we're
he said
starting
he wanted to be a Bear. Did you hear that? Tom Brady said he said the sneaky team that he almost went to was the Chicago Bears. That the Bears recruited him heavily, and it was pretty hush-hush.
Interesting.
And he considered it.
Interesting. We're starting to see a little bit of the personality that Tom Brady is bringing to the broadcast. I don't know how I feel about it, because I almost feel like he's starting to get like a nickname here, Shady Brady, because he's throwing shade now at the quarterbacks that he's calling games for. Did you see like his comment about Baker Mayfield?
Well, Baker had a comment about him.
Well,
he was responding to. I
mean, okay, so like the first game against Dak, it was kind of a funny comment, like Dak fumbled in the pocket or whatever, and Tom Brady's like, "Oh, you gotta, sometimes that happens when you step up in the pocket, and didn't really ever happen with me. I didn't put the ball on the ground like that." And it's like, okay, all right, Tom. But this time too, no, he's I didn't think what Baker said was really that. Like, it wasn't like that negative. It was more like, yeah, I came here and people were high strung, but like that's a known thing about Tom. It wasn't it's just, it clearly worked. Like, I don't think Baker's saying that it was, it's just they have two completely different personalities and leadership styles. But I don't know. I just thought Tom took it a little bit too personally. But it's kind of funny to see him react to stuff like that and not be afraid to like throw some shade on the broadcast, because he is he holds all the leverage. So
I agree, he took it too personally. Like Peyton Manning would have laughed it off and made a joke about it somehow. But I also love that Tom's being authentically Tom, because what we know about Tom is the
he's
dude
being vulnerable.
He's got a giant chip on his shoulder. That's who he is. Like, that's what made him the greatest of all time. So I love that he's like, basically, screw you, bud. I won Super Bowls. That's why it was high strung. Like, go fuck yourself. Like,
I just loved because the quote was Baker saying, when I came to Tampa, like everyone was very tight, high strung, like the atmosphere, everything like that. So, I kind of just loosened it up a bit, and then it comes out to Tom, and Tom just goes, "Well, I thought winning Super Bowls was the goal, not staying loose." That's to me. To me, that's what contributes to high-strung atmosphere, is not winning Super Bowls. That's stressful. But yeah, that was funny. The good stuff. All right, Bengals on the road. They needed to get a win. It wasn't the most impressive fashion, although the offense did look pretty good throughout this game. 34-24 win over the Panthers, who do look a lot different with Andy Dalton under center for sure. Still a lot of questions for me about this Bengals defense. I'm not, sounding the alarms for the Bengals in terms of the
Hubbard looked like Eric Dickerson, dude. It was
insane.
No
kidding, man. 100 yards on the ground, a touchdown for him. He also had a few catches there as well. Yeah, the Bengals defense is pretty bad. They are going to need to have just dominant offensive outings. They're going to have to score 30 points a game, which they're very much capable of. I still think this is a team that can get to the playoffs despite their, brutal 0-3 start. One of the, few to do it with an 0-3 start. I think they can do that. But I do have concerns about like any sort of like magic that they can create in the postseason, because you can win without a top defense in the league. You can win a championship. I don't think you can win a championship with a bottom 5 to 10 defense in the league. No. And that's what it's looking at like for them right now.
Yeah, they're definitely, to me, no longer in the championship conversation because of that defense. But I will say, Dan, think about what the Bengals had to overcome this week. You're going to Carolina, who's got nothing to lose, who's probably the team that feels the best about themselves in the NFL going into this week, because it's like the huge weight lifted off their shoulders of like, wait, we don't actually stink. It's just that guy stunk, and now we actually can play and we can win games, right? So they're going against a team that has nothing to lose, and they have everything to lose. Falling to 0-4, the pressure going into a game, trying to avoid going 0-4, I can only imagine that pressure was like. And you could tell from the game plan, both teams dominated in the run game. They both said to themselves, like, let's just go out there and be physical. And so I like that I saw that from Cincinnati, right? Like I think Cincinnati had 131 yards rushing from their running backs. Like I loved that, right? That takes pressure off of Joe Burrow. But the fact that they could not get enough consistent stops to make this game feel like, oh, like this game should have been 33-17, where it's like, all right, but it was actually like, no, this game the Panthers almost won this game. Now, next week is everything for Cincinnati. It's everything. If you've bought back into Cincinnati, I would just say you probably should do more research and look ahead. They play the Ravens next week. And so like that'll be the determining factor. If they can beat the Ravens next week, we all should be back in 100% on Cincinnati. If they lose to the Ravens at 1-4 with a loss in division like that, you probably say to yourself, yeah, this team is now going to have to scrap and claw to be relevant for the 7th seed.
Yeah. Yep. Very true. They're going to really have to. I mean, the division alone is an impediment to their progress at this point, and they've got some tough matchups coming up too. Jaguars a candidate for worst loss for me, but it was almost like, can I beat up on them any more than I already have? I mean, at this point,
I'm with you.
They looked the best they've looked all season in my view in this game, and they had a chance to win it, but then they
had
ultimately
leads
altered yet again. I mean, they had an opportunity, and this would have easily been the best win for me in that category. I would have said, you get right against a division opponent, a good team in their home. Because Trevor Lawrence looked good in this game. They were able to put stuff together, but then ultimately they give it up in the end. And it's just this team cannot put the full package together. They just can't put a full 60 minutes on tape. And it's frustrating. I can't imagine what it's like to be a Jags fan right now who for years suffered through this franchise, then to get the number one pick generational talent and still not be able to seemingly get over the hump after a teaser of a first season where you or second season where you end up winning the division and everything and getting an impressive playoff win. It's all been downhill since. But Trevor Lawrence, 2 touchdowns. Like, I do think they did put some good stuff on tape here to give them maybe a boost, but now that you're 0-4, their odds of a playoff run are almost nil at this point. The statistics bear that out. I think it's less than 5% of teams when they go 0-4 make the playoffs. So now you just got to hope that you can, get to 8 wins and have a good finish to the season so that you can hope for 2025,
Oh, you're playing for your jobs. Now it's the playing for your jobs. Everyone is, or does it implode, right? It's a put up or shut up or implode. And it's, to me, what's so devastating for your Jags fan is the Jaguars had leads in this game at multiple times. And you said Trevor played good. He still made social mistakes. Only 18 of 33 for 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough when you need your team, when you need to win a game. I need you to go out there and be 25 of 33 for 275 yards and 3 touchdowns. I need that. I need that. We paid you $275 million. Like, I need you to do that. I need you to be Superman. I need you to go out there and rush for 100 yards if that's what it takes. I need you to do that. And he didn't do that. Now, is that him?
Yeah, I feel like the bar is moving to just being like, where I'm just hoping that he can just have a normal game and then it feels like he did big. But you're right. I mean, that the expectations for him need to be much, much higher. He needs to be a top 12 quarterback.
And I need the game plan. I need everything. I need Trayvon Walker. Hello, former first round pick. I need Josh Allen, who just got a huge contract. I need them to go out there and dominate and strip sack fumbles, multiple sacks. And it's not happening in Jacksonville. Is that a motivation thing? Is it a coaching thing? Is it a overvalue of talent? These guys just aren't as good as you think that they were. I don't know. I still don't know the answer to that. Can I also say this, though? Great win for the Texans. What a win for the Texans. Now, again, I said it earlier. Am I impressed by who the Texans have beat? No, because the resume of who they've beaten, they're bad teams. I include my Bears with that. But when you have an absolutely desperate division rival come in and throw the kitchen sink at you and have a lead on you in your place, and you don't have your star running back, and you to go out there and get the win, that's an impressive win by the Houston Texans. I don't care how ugly it was. I don't care that that it's times you were losing to an inferior opponent. you found the way to win the game, and you get a ton of credit for that, and it's going to come back and pay huge dividends for you as you grow your lead in this division.
Commanders win 42-14 against the Arizona Cardinals as this Commanders offense continues
I don't know
to
what to say.
amaze.
It's crazy.
They were putting up a bunch of stats about first 4 career games and just 4-game span. 4-game span in any portion of a player's career, they put up passer rating. And you had Drew Brees, had a 4-game span with 135 passer rating or whatever. And Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Jaden Daniels had the highest. And not only did he have the highest passer rating in a 4-game span ever in a career, but he did it in his first ever 4 games in the NFL. Pretty impressive stuff from him. Oh, and by the way, Commanders punter Tress Way has punted 4 times this year.
In 4 games.
4 times. Incredible stuff. I mean, you got to be amazed at what the Commanders are doing. What's the better story right now? The 4-0 Vikings or the 3-1 Commanders? I don't know.
They're both incredible stories. Dan, I don't know what the longevity is, right? Like, what's the crash down from this? Is it a small step down? Do they just take a step down and they become a really good offense? And it's like, hey, okay, or because it's not sustainable what they're doing. It's just not. And we know from Cliff Kingsbury's history, it's not. And we know every week more film gets put out there, right? And defensive staffs are going to look at it more and more and more and more. But I will say right now, as we stand today, Jaden Daniels is playing top 5 quarterback play in the NFL. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact I heard from Peter Schrager this week that as soon as Cliff Kingsbury interviewed with the Commanders and decided to do that, he spent all offseason just an offense for Jaden Daniels. And just like
Jaden. Yep.
And knowing that, but it was before they drafted him, and just saying, we're going all in on Jaden. We knew the Bears were going all in on Caleb, so let's go all in on Jaden. And you get to see a genius offensive call at work. Cliff Kingsbury wasn't a great head coach, but there's a huge difference between being a head coach and being and a coordinator, right? A coordinator, you get to be a specialist. As a head coach, you have to make schedules. You have to deal with, hey, my wife's pregnant and I can't make this game, or hey, I got a death in the family, and all that. Coordinators don't have to deal with that. You just get to go in the lab and create. And Cliff Kingsbury right now is a top 5 go in the lab and create offensive mind in football. Up there with Sean McVay, up there with Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan. He's got to be, because of what we've seen in his past and right now. And I will say, the offensive line is playing way better than we thought they were. And they would be playing at this time. And so all that's great. You got to be pumped. The thing I think Jaden Daniels deserves a lot of credit for is week 1, remember they ran the ball like 18 times with Jaden Daniels? He only had 8 carries last night. Again, it was this stat line was Lamar Jackson, and he is Lamar Jackson. He's a taller, slightly skinnier Lamar Jackson. Like he's Lamar right now. I mean, if you watch them play, this is the only comp. And they're both tearing it up. And they both had strong run games. I mean, Brian Robinson, 21 carries, 101 yards. Extremely impressive. I will say this, though. If I'm a Cardinals fan, we were at home. We have a defensive head coach, and our defensive head coach just gave up 42 points in year 2 of his system. I'm concerned, right? Like, I'm concerned because we know defensive head coaches, they don't get the length, the leash that an offensive head coach would get, right? And here you got Rich Gannon, his defense has looked pedestrian at times in a couple of their big losses right now to start the year against the Bills and against the Commanders. And so that's a concern if I'm a Cardinals fan, as I'm trying to figure out what's my future. Kyler feels like your future. Harrison Jr. feels like your future. It feels like offensively at times you can be really explosive, but defensively at times right now with your defensive head coach, it feels like ugly. And that's not good enough in year 2 of Gannon, your defensive head coach's, defense and his game plan.
Yeah, agreed. How do we feel about the 49ers stopping the bleeding? They avoid a 3-game losing streak, defeat the Patriots team they obviously were supposed to beat and should beat. Debo Samuel returned for this game. They had George Kittle, so they started to get a little bit healthier. 30-13, pretty convincing win overall and dominated from start to finish. So, are we like, obviously I had the 49ers as the 1 seed. I don't feel that way anymore through the first month of the season, but I still feel confident in the 49ers as being a higher seed come season's end, especially because of the injuries that they sustained early this year and only getting healthier and better, I think.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the Niners. I wasn't concerned last week. If you remember, I said the concern was normally when they lost, it was Purdy the finger at last week's loss. Purdy played great and the rest of the team failed them. Well, they got Kittle back and look what they do, right? You get one piece of that puzzle back and it opens that offense back up for them and they're right back at it. I'm still waiting for Ayuk to break through.
Yeah.
But maybe with Juwan Jennings, they don't need it, but it still feels like eventually that dam has to break if the Niners want to win a Super Bowl or win an NFC title. Like they need Ayuk to be back to a 1,000-yard receiver and a true number 1, like they paid him to be. So that's still like lingering for Niners fans. But otherwise, no, I'm not concerned. Again, it feels good when you win a game in a really good fashion against a team that you circled as a win to start the year. So like, don't overthink it. Don't complain about it. And if you're the Patriots, they're now falling into not fun to watch anymore. That should not mean throw Drake May. Do not throw in Drake May just for the fun of it. You have a fan base that has seen a lot of winning. I know it's been bleak the last like 3 years, but you've seen a lot of winning in the last 20 years. Do not panic. Do not panic and throw this kid to the wolves. Keep waiting. At least wait till Thanksgiving. Wait for the schedule to open up a little bit. Give him a bye week to get ready to start, something like that. Don't just throw him the wolves now because, we're ugly. We want to not be as ugly and boring. It's okay to be ugly and boring right now. It's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay to go 5-12 this year and take a top offensive lineman next year to protect your, franchise investment.
Absolutely.
That's what I would be hoping for right now. The Patriots. You're not going to compete in the division, and you're not, going to be in the playoffs. So might as well look forward to building up this team, this franchise with the new regime. All right, let's rifle through this. We talked about the Raiders defeating the Browns, Chiefs beating the Chargers 17-10. Very, very close game. Kind of a fun one, even though it was low scoring, obviously. But the Chiefs having to win ugly, physical. Chargers, the same, kind of just having to battle each other to get out to an early 10-0 lead and then held scoreless for 3 quarters. Really, to me, I just keep looking at this Chiefs defense and I'm like, man, they are so good. It's such a good defense. And like Patrick Mahomes just doesn't have to be what Patrick Mahomes was early in his career for this team to do well. They're 4-0 and it doesn't feel like they're 4-0, but they are. And they're still the team to beat in the NFL.
Yeah, it's the first time the Chargers ran into a wall. I mean, J.K. Dobbins, 21 carries, but only 55 yards. And so for the Chargers offense, they absolutely hit a wall. They're not healthy with their offensive tackles. I'm surprised Herbert played, but he played pretty well, all things considered, being as beat up as he was. And if you're the Chiefs, again, you just laugh. I'm sure they're just back in Kansas City laughing. I mean, they're crying because Rashee Rice. That sucks. But you hope Hollywood Brown comes back. I don't get why all the media today has been like, the Chiefs trading for Devonta Adams or the Chiefs trading for Tyreek Hill. Like,
they don't need
if I'm the Chiefs, I'm laughing at that. You have Xavier Worthy, you have Juju, and you know that Hollywood Brown will be back. So, yeah, you lost Rice for the year. That sucks. But Kelsey got going. He stepped right in as soon as Rice went down and had a big game. Listen, impressive win for the Chiefs because they just keep winning in ways that are anti-Chiefs in our head. 17-10, but that's this version of the Chiefs, and it's a damn good football team.
Yeah, I mean, they'll meet you where you are, and they'll still beat you at your own game.
Yeah.
A
lot of times. Knife fights in the trenches.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We already talked about the Ravens Bills game as well.
We did.
Get to the 2 Monday night games. The Titans 31-12 over the Dolphins. Dolphins look terrible now. without Tua there. Yeah, seriously. Will Levis injured in this game, falls on his shoulder. I don't know what the status is of that right now, but Mason Rudolph came in and
won him a game.
The team down. So yeah, it won the game. I'm not sure there's many takeaways here. 1-3 for both teams.
The takeaway is it's a win for Tua, even though Tua looked bad in the
that's true. That's a good point.
In the loss that he started to the Bills and got injured late in the fourth, and they would have lost that game no matter if Tua finished or not. It's a win for Tua because this offense looks completely incompetent without Tua. So that's
just the players alone, the talented players aren't producing. Devon Achane not doing well. Waddle,
which is weird too. It's really weird because we've seen McVay, we've seen Shanahan, we've seen Kevin O'Connell, McDaniel's peers, same system guys, thrive with backups and third strings, and McDaniel's is not. So that's a little bit of a concern, I think, if you're a Dolphins fan. Let's be honest, if you're a Titans fan at this point, can you make the argument that you're just like, fine, I can ride with Mason Rudolph? Sure, but I think you'd still be doing yourself a huge disservice not to just play Will Levis so you're 100% confident on your Will Levis decision, whether you're moving on or off him by the end of the year. Because again, as we've seen from Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, all these other guys, you don't want to be playing the what-if game in 5 years from now. Will Levis is playing really good football with someone else. You're going, crap, why did we move off him too early? Get your 100% answer. And I know it was an ugly interception to start the game, but I would just keep playing him. You have nothing to lose. Again, get a high draft pick if he keeps sucking or whatever it is, but you have nothing to lose. Don't bench him just to bench him to try to win football games. I don't think that makes sense to the Titans.
And apparently, as Adam Schefter tweeted early this morning, that head coach Brian Callahan made it clear last night that if Will Levis is healthy, he is their starting quarterback.
He should be.
They enter the team's bye week this week too, which comes at a great time.
So he should be healthy and good to go.
He should be back and ready to go. And I agree with you. Get as much of an assessment out of him as you can, because if he does pan out, second round pick too. Like, you didn't have the ultimate investment in him, so you can both move off of him easily. And if he pans out, then it's like, wow, we got great value out of a second round pick. Finally, the Lions beat the Seahawks 42-29. I feel like it was a dominant performance by the Lions, but at the same time, this was close game throughout. Like, I truly felt that the Seahawks are way better than I thought they would be, to be honest. Like, my takeaway from this game was I already knew the Lions were good and a formidable team. And it was nice to see Jared Goff kind of, get going after his slow start statistically to the year. But the Seahawks were right there with them for the majority of this game. I know they ended up winning by 13 points to the Lions, but it was much closer the entire time. And a cool wrinkle in there, Jared Goff said he caught his first ever touchdown pass since like 7th grade. So that's pretty funny.
That was a fun play and a great throw by Amon-Ra St. Brown. That was Amon-Ra St. Brown's first ever throw in an NFL or college game. Normally they do that play with guys who've done it before or thrown in college, but no, Amon-Ra with a dime, even though he'd never done it before.
That was a great pass. Yeah.
I'll say this. Listen, the Lions gave up 32 first downs to Seattle. Now, Seattle
was looking good.
Is an offensive team. Like, those 3 wide receivers, that running back, and Geno absolutely should stay the starting quarterback for Seattle. Like, if you're Seattle, there's no need to draft a quarterback. Now, it's still early, I guess, in the year. Like, things could go haywire. But from what I've seen so far from Geno through 4 games, like, he should still be your starter next year. And you have him on a 1-year, next year's the last year of that 3-year deal they signed him to. Like, you roll into that season with Geno still 100%. And I think they don't need to like invest a first round pick at a quarterback. I truly don't believe that. Not yet. Maybe a second or third or fourth round, right? You pick some guy up, but
get a guy sit behind Geno for a year, and maybe
Geno is your guy. Maybe you extend him. Like, I mean, right now he's playing that type of football. I'm not worried about Seattle. Seattle ran into literally a perfect offensive game. It was a perfect offensive game from Ben Johnson, Matt Stafford, those wide receivers and those running backs. Dan, Detroit is the only, maybe the Ravens are the only other team, and we saw 90% of it with the Ravens this weekend, who could honestly pitch a perfect game on offense. Detroit pitched a perfect game on offense. I mean, 18 for 18 for Goff, 292 yards, 2 touchdowns. And Gibbs and Montgomery are so good. They're so good. Every time I see David Montgomery, I hate Ryan Poles' face for letting him go. Now, DeAndre Swift had a great game, and you're hoping it works out. But David Montgomery's, to me, a top 3 back in the NFL. And he's
playing really well.
He's lucky because his career will be extended because he's getting Gibbs to take so much of the load, too. Detroit can play a perfect game on offense. And when they do that, it doesn't matter that they gave up 32 first downs because they'll just outscore you because they're just so dynamic. Goff is, when he's rolling like that, they're unbeatable. That is why Detroit can win a Super Bowl, that game right there. Because even if their defense flubs and falls apart, if their offense plays to their utmost potential, they are literally unstoppable.
Yeah, no, it's so true. They are a very complete football team, and can win a lot of different ways. But to see Goff get back into like what we saw from last year, the year before, they're on a moving train, and it's getting scarier. I mean, they're getting better and faster and stronger as this year goes on. So, they may not be one of the undefeated teams in the league, but they are a top contender in the NFC and the NFL as a whole.
They might have, of the one-loss teams, they might have the best loss, right? Because they lost to a really solid Tampa Bay team, right? Because it's not like they lost to a bum. It's not like Cincinnati losing to the Patriots or whatever. Second time I use that reference in the show, by the way. But yeah, it's fascinating. Great week of football. Ready for week 5. Ready for bye weeks because I think some of these teams already really need it. And I know that seems early for teams, but for a couple of these teams, I think it's coming at the right time. Yeah,
I know just off the top of my head, I know Detroit, Tennessee, and Philly all on a bye week this upcoming week. So
they need it.
A lot of teams early in the season, you kind of almost don't want to have your bye week early in the year. But then again, you never know what adversity you'll be faced with at what point in the season. And some teams, like some of these that we just mentioned, face injuries early on and could use the bye week now. So for them, came at a good time, and we'll see how they fare coming out of the bye. But yeah, should be a good week 5. We'll have a few less games to talk about next week, but still a full slate nonetheless, and looking forward to what we'll get from week 5 in the NFL. But that will do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. Check us out at FB Lounge Pod wherever you use social media. As always, we are on your favorite podcast platform as well as YouTube. Please like, subscribe. Check us out at forfantasysakeqc.com for all of the rest of the shows as well. We appreciate all the support, and we will see you all back here next week.